going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are here for the final Innistrad Crimson Vow side story. We'll be back next week for the final Innistrad Crimson Vow story in general. But we are here for side story number 4 of 4, The Devouring House by Brian Evanson. My quick review at the top of this one is, I enjoyed this. I think if you like horror, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. And I think, you know, just be aware that it's like psychological horror and body horror. Like some people have issues with that, so be aware of that. But I think for what it was, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was those things. I usually like those things. This one I didn't like. From the body horror perspective, like, I don't know, maybe like it's easier for me to see it than hear it described. I don't know. Okay. But I always feel like when there's a lot of body horror in these stories and you're reading it, I'm always like, stop. You know, whereas like if I watch a movie with it in it, it doesn't affect me as much.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Okay, so maybe like what you're picturing in your head is infinitely worse than what they end up showing you on screen.
Oh, maybe. Thanks. It makes me feel less crazy. No, it doesn't.
Well, if you want to see if you can also feel less crazy and you want to read this story for yourself if you have not gotten the chance, or if you want a reminder of it, the top link in the description down below will take you to this story so you can read it for yourself. And then either way, we would love it if you would then either come back here or stay here with us to listen to the full review itself.
Yes, and give your opinions and thoughts down in the comments.
Correct.
Thanks.
As always, about anything that we discuss, if you agree or disagree with us, anything that you feel that we should have added, or something that you found impactful about this story, again, whether we talked about it or not, just like your favorite part. Before we get started though, just a reminder, hi, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. Thank you, because you will get notified whenever any of our videos come out, including more JaARs over the coming weeks. Like I said, next week, the finale of Crimson Vow, and then the week after that, we will be going into Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what a transformation that's going to be.
Yeah, big time. Yes, exactly. Like so I'm looking...
pendulum flipping thing.
I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to seeing where that takes us. But yeah, so definitely stay tuned for that. We also have been having on Mondays, see if I can get this. I was like, can I get this quickly enough? Probably not. We've been having these Varia deck reviews, deck openings and deck reviews. These are the Season 2 Varia decks from the Kickstarter, and we have been reviewing these one after the other. This past week we did the Phoenix Spellsword, which I loved this deck. I loved it. So I highly encourage you to go check it out. And if you are interested in purchasing Varia product or checking out a new CCG, you might want to check out those videos because they definitely have some type of discounts for you if you check out those videos for yourselves. So to go do that, thank us later. We'll be reviewing all 7 of them, so stay tuned in the coming weeks for more if that's something you're interested in.
So you get to see every one of them before you buy, if that's how you're doing it.
Correct.
And you will get a discount as well.
Yes. Just don't forget to go in and do that for the pre-orders. But yes. Also, we go live every Monday and Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel. Mondays, for you Magic the Gathering fans, we play MTG Arena, and on Fridays we play whatever video game we happen to be playing at the time. This Friday, it will be a continuation of us playing through X-Men Legends for the PlayStation 2. So definitely stay tuned for those. Again, when you ring that bell, thank you, you get those notifications sent right to you as soon as a video comes out, as soon as we go live, so you don't have to worry about memorizing our schedule or anything like that. You'll get notified. Also, we have other channels linked down in the description box below. You should definitely check those out. Video Games for All, Gluten Free for All. Subscribe and ring the bells there as well.
Please.
But enough delay. On to the full review itself. I was like ready for this story at the beginning to be like, okay, let's talk about the things that we usually talk about, and then it like so far went off the rails. But I did talk about, or I did write down the fact that there were angelic symbols. They didn't even call them Abyssinian symbols. I was trying to figure out, so this comes up later as well. This was like a first-person omnipotent perspective that we got this story from, because it was only from Streffin's perspective, but it was like, you know, telling you about how he felt and how he looked and his surroundings and stuff, but it didn't like clue you into the fact of like what was wrong mentally with him at any given moment. So it was like in his head, but like not in his head, but like they weren't telling
like
you
through his eyes, but not in his head.
Right. So because it wasn't I see this and I see that and I am Streffin. It was Streffin sees this and Streffin sees that and feels this way. But if it's an omnipotent perspective, you would think that it would be able to like tell you he thinks it's this, but it's actually this. But it didn't do that, which was better for how the story worked, by the way. This is it's not a complaint by any means, but just an interesting point to bring up. But that's why I thought it was interesting that they called them angelic symbols as opposed to Abyssinian symbols, and that they also mentioned, you know, saying something to the effect of like, even though the angel isn't around anymore, you know, like Avacyn died, or if it was, maybe it was Bruna and Gisela, but like, I'm like 90% sure it was Avacyn. But they just like didn't bring it up that it was specifically Avacyn. It was just like, the angel's not around anymore, so the wards don't work as well.
Right.
And then they even said, you know, they don't work, especially in these times that we're living in, or whatever. Which I thought was an interesting way of putting that, given the times that we're all living in. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, exactly. Then we have Brant. So basically, I mean, this story, aside from the parents, which we can talk about that in a moment, but this was a 2-character story.
Yeah, basically.
Streffin. Did I say Stefan before? Streffin and Brant. That's it. Streffin, Maurer, and Brant. I guess you could argue that the house was kind of a character.
Yeah.
It sure had a lot of character, that's for sure.
It did a lot of things.
Yeah.
That, you know, inanimate objects aren't supposed to be able to do.
No, like terrified Amy, or at least I shouldn't say terrified, but unsettled Amy greatly. Okay.
Like sucked life energy out of its people that were in it.
Right. So what I loved about once this kicked into high gear with being in the house and the crazy stuff, it really got me thinking about what was going on, right? So Brant went into this house and then slit his own throat.
Right.
Which
I was like, what the
yeah, so odd. Well, and to be fair, Streffin said the same thing. He's like, why would he do that?
Right.
And then his blood drains out, and Streffin's like, oh, good, blood, and like goes down to go drink it, and gets like some, it said, but then the rest seeped into the stone, which like seemed to activate the house, right? Like the house basically fed on the blood, it seemed.
Oh, I thought it was that the house made him decide to do that because it wanted to feed on his blood.
So, maybe. Again, it's very unclear because even Streffin is like, did he lead me here to trap me like this? Like, to me, that feels a little silly. I mean, I guess if what the story was telling us, or what Streffin was telling us, is that Brant was like obsessed with Streffin because he was a vampire hunter, and so he was obsessed with getting Streffin. But do you really get the satisfaction of getting him if you kill yourself to do it? Like, does that really feel good? You're like, oh, good, I got him dead. Like,
I think they tried to say that it was like, okay, Streffin's gonna end up killing Brant here, and Brant knows it, and so to prevent him from actually doing that, he's gonna off himself.
Yeah, it just seemed like Brant had been the one to, that Brant had been the one to put himself in that situation. So,
yeah,
Like, then why would your response be, well, Streffin's going to kill me. I guess I got to kill myself and trap him. Like, just don't go there. Yeah, it's just, but it was just so. So that part didn't make a lot of sense to me. But so your theory.
That's why I thought after that it was the house.
Which is very interesting. I hadn't thought of that. What I had thought of, I think I wrote it down here somewhere, was I lost it. I had it.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's not your fault. Was that it was just another illusion.
Yeah.
The house was throwing illusions left and right, so maybe Brant slitting his throat was just an illusion. Right. Like maybe Brant went through that area and was like, okay, house, you're up. And then when Streffin shows up and sees Brant slit his throat, that's not Brant anymore. That's the house doing that.
Right.
And it's kind of before all the crazy stuff starts happening. Because, again, it seems like the blood draining into the holes in the ground or the floor is what kind of activates the house. But maybe that's not the activating moment, and that's just what it's leading us to believe, or leading Streffin to believe.
Right. And maybe it's just that the house knows whoever is in there, like, well enough in that moment because it's enchanted or whatever, that it can just like go into your memories and be like, okay, these are the things I need to show you. Mm-hmm. So and maybe I think Brant was never even around.
Well,
and it was just, and Brant's still alive somewhere else, you know, walking
blissfully
around.
Unaware, yeah.
Right, blissfully unaware that Stefan had this whole thing happen to him where he saw Brant kill himself.
So this is another one of those moments, right, where sometimes I read a story and I'm like, it's confusing and I hate that it's confusing. But there are other times where I read a story and I'm like, it's confusing and that's amazing.
Right.
Because it's exactly what it's supposed to be. Streffin has no idea what's going on. And so the fact that we have no idea what's going on is perfect. It makes perfect sense. And I love that that's the case. I really enjoy that.
Right, because then we can come on this show and talk about all of our theories.
That's right. And I would love to hear more. If there are more theories that you all have, I want to know. Because when you said yours, I hadn't thought of it.
Right.
Well,
when you said yours about, like, Brant, like, being in on it with the house, I didn't think of that.
Well, because Streffin, like, pseudo-mentioned that, but it was one of the, like, 20 things that he guessed for what could possibly be going on, you know? So, okay. Then, it's, again, I wanted to talk about the kind of unsettling moments. Because it really, like Amy said, it really was, like, I'm reading and she's going, nope, oh God, you know, and like exclaiming and doing all these other things. I like tried to lean into it, not that I was like totally like, oh yeah, whatever. It's like a, you know, jaunt through the park, not a problem, but I still wanted to like get the flavor of the story out there instead of like stopping to be grossed out, you know? But I wrote down some of the things that were written. So Brant's reanimated corpse reaching into his own chest to grab at his heart or seemingly penetrate his heart to get arterial blood to write. And he had to go back. He was only able to write 4 letters, and then he had to go back for more blood and then write the last 4 to write Hladvora, whatever that is.
Why do you need arterial blood to write that?
I guess because it's darker and deeper.
Whatever blood. But still.
Yeah.
Ew.
I'm curious
I guess because, like, it couldn't be, like, blood that was coming out of him, because then the house would have sucked it up.
Yeah, maybe.
But still. Like, why is that how you do that?
I'm also curious, I didn't take the time to look at this at all, but I'm curious if Hladvora is anything. Like, if it's an anagram for anything or whatever.
Oh.
It's not anything backwards, because that I kind of always look for. But Arov Dal isn't anything, so...
Well, not in English.
Sure, maybe it's you're right, maybe it's in a different language. And again, if anybody knows, if you have anagrams that it comes into, or you're aware of a different language that it might be hinting towards, as always, definitely let us know.
Well, I mean, Latin would make sense, or, I don't know, something older.
Sure. Maybe.
Yeah, something ancient.
So there was that. Then there was this one really unsettled you, I feel like. Streffin's mother's face poking through the wallpaper or coming up behind the wallpaper. And then his entire mother comes out of the wall, but like her legs are too long and her fingers are too long.
All warped.
Yeah. That was awesome. I appreciated that.
No, it's a lot less scary if it's just your mom than if it's like gangly fucked up your mom. So.
And then going, off of the parental motif, then you have Streffin's father, who I love how, like, he's excited to see him at first, and he's like, but wait, this can't be my dad. Like, it's like, oh, my dad's alive. Oh, my dad's alive in this situation. So, yeah. And then it's like, it's his dad, but, like, his skin is wrong. Like, he pulled it on quickly.
Yeah, it was too big for him.
Gross. Gross. And then the thing that, like, comes out of his father's skin, he, like, pops it like a balloon after, like, choking it. Awesome. Like, really awesome. So, I really loved the fact that he knows it's an illusion. And he keeps telling himself that it's an illusion right before falling into the trick of falling for the illusion.
Right.
And then being like, oh, but it's not. But is it, though? No, no, it's not.
'Cause it was
but is it? Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that sort of like continually falling in and out of the awareness of or like levels of awareness of the fact that it was an illusion. Yeah.
Yeah, and we as the readers are sitting there going, it's obviously fake, dude. And he's just like, but my dad's alive. And you're like, no, he's not. No.
He was under a spell, man.
And then it gets so much worse for you every time. But to be fair, it's not like he could have just left, right? Like,
right.
I mean, maybe if he truly was just like, it's an illusion, I know it's an illusion, none of the, like, oh yeah, it's my father, but it's not. Like,
yeah, but how would he have left? Would just like walk up to the door? Like he does that and it like turns into something that's not a door and then eats him or whatever.
Well, but that's why I'm implying.
Right.
If he fully knew that it was an illusion and never fell into any of the tricks, then maybe he would be able to just leave, right? Like, yes, the doors were messing with him, but that's because he was letting the doors mess with him, kind of a thing, you know?
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't know. I don't know how this all works. How does the magic work? Who knows? So the other thing is, because this is third person or first person omnipotent, but it's also not, anything that's happening, Streffin, it just is an unreliable narrator.
Right.
You have no, like, he's just like, oh, well, it's probably this. Nope. Like, you have no idea about anything that he's saying and whether it's truthful or not. And then...
Well, and that's what makes it good, like you said before.
Oh, yeah.
It's because he's so unreliable that it makes it more realistic. Because you know if that was happening to you, that's what you would be doing too.
Sure.
Trying to come up with all of these different, like we said before, theories of what was going on here, even though you don't have a freaking clue.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it was so interesting to me that I like the concept of an unreliable narrator. I think the last time that it was done really well in Magic Story was the Corset 2019 stories, I believe, with the twins, with Nicol Bolas and Ugin. And you're hearing Ugin's stories over and over and over again, and then you finally hear Nicol Bolas' story, and like the whole time you're like, okay, Nicol Bolas, like, sure, it definitely happened that way. Ugin was definitely afraid of you that whole time. And meanwhile, it brings it up to you of like, oh, but we were only hearing Ugin's stories that whole time. So, like, Nicol Bolas' stories are so obviously overblown and puffing him up to make him look and feel bigger than he is, but
that doesn't make Ugin's true.
Exactly.
It just makes Ugin's.
Right. And the ones that we heard first. right? And so to us, it's
That's
our
what we're
only
comparing it
yes,
to.
it's our only window to those stories. But at the same time, we're just like, wait a minute, but is it though? So like, I really loved that eye-opening moment for me, and so this story kind of felt, obviously not. I mean, the Nicol Bolas Ugin stories were weeks and weeks and weeks of stories. This is one story, but it still was like, I can't believe anything that this dude said, or said that he saw, or said that he was feeling, or whatever. Like, he could have just been standing in the middle of the ruins of his home in the woods, just like walking back and forth. You know, if we were an outside party watching him,
right,
and like
just
nothing's
see this
happening.
guy like wandering around inside the ruins and
Yep.
going like, what's that dude doing?
Yep. So, okay.
But yeah, like, I think that was my favorite part of this story.
What's that?
Was that the narration was unreliable.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I didn't really like the story, but that part is cool. That is something that I think I'd like to see in stories more.
Sure.
Because it just gives it an authenticity that other narrators can't give.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so much more realistic that way.
Sure. Yeah. My big question for this, because I only had one other point that I wanted to bring up. Maybe this is a quicker story. I've kind of lost track of time a bit, but maybe this is not a quick story, a quicker episode of JaAR.
Review, yeah.
But the only other point I wanted to bring up that I'm curious about multiple people, yours and your opinions of. I think this was the best side story in terms of being a solid horror story, right? Like, there were other side stories that did a damn good job of telling a story, beginning, middle, end, having the climax, having the falling action, like just being solid short stories. And there were side stories that were good horror stories. But I think this one was the best in that it's so, at least in terms of psychological and body horror, like, you have no idea what's actually going on, what actually happened. It was disgusting and unsettling, and at times made you want to stop reading it because it was like that troubling for you to hear, which means it was probably doing its job. I assume that was the goal, right? So I think this was the best one of these in terms of the horror motif.
I think so too, because I think this one was so much more immersive than the other ones, particularly the last one. I didn't think the last one was very immersive at all.
Sure.
I really thought it was very tropey and just kind of like scratched the surface of anything real, and then that was the end.
Yeah, that was like 2 weeks ago that we did that.
Yeah. So, like, each thing that it talked about, or each thing that I felt was of importance that it talked about, it just talked about it. It really felt like, oh, okay, I can't go into what this means at all because the story doesn't go into what this means at all. All it does is basically, I see dead people, or whatever. And, like, it doesn't go into the ramifications of what it means to see dead people, right?
Yeah.
It just is the trope of I see dead people,
right.
You know what I mean? And so on.
And I think because we're referencing past side stories, I also want to give appropriate props for this story because it doesn't end with, like, it ends. It actually ends. Like, he dies in the house. Like, that's it. He dies of hunger, of starvation, because who knows how long he was there just wandering around, and dies of starvation. That's it. He's dead. So the story's over. Like, could we come back to learn more about this house? Maybe. Sure. Maybe. But do I need that? No. Am I sitting here going, oh man, I really hope we come back to... No. But for past stories, I've said that, where I've been like, okay, these characters have, like, walked off into the sunset, but it was like a bit of a cliffhanger, so you don't fully know what happened to them. When are we ever going to see them again? We're not. Like, it's possible that we're just not.
Right.
The story team's going to change 5 more times between now and when we come back from Innistrad again. And so there's no chance. Like, I'm not sitting here pretending like we're ever going to hear about any of these characters again that aren't named, like, Gisa and Geralf from a side story, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. And in fact...
Which sucks.
In fact, notably, again, we didn't hear about Geralf.
Yeah.
Because I assumed when we did games, yonder time and ago, for Shadows over Innistrad or Eldritch Moon, whatever, 5 years ago or so, when we read games, I was like, oh, cool, that was it. Oh, it had to have been in Shadows. Because I said I was looking forward in Eldritch Moon to reading the story because then the Gisa and Geralf card was there as well. And we never got one. And so then when these stories came around, we read about Gisa in Midnight Hunt. And I said, okay, awesome. Gisa was in Midnight Hunt. Geralf is in Crimson Vow. So, and the story with Gisa ends with her saying, well, I'm going to go see my brother.
Right.
Now. And so I was like, okay, great. So
right.
now
So
we're going to
get to hear about Geralf and his interactions with Gisa when she shows up, and especially since he's very, very unhappy that she said she was going to visit.
Yep. He flat out told her, don't come. In the art, the zombie that he has for Geralf's card for this set, the zombie that he made to look like Gisa, and the flavor text is like, what do you think, sister? I made it in your image or something. Of course he's going to taunt her like that because he doesn't want her there. So he's going to try to mess her up, even though she's arguably infinitely more powerful than he is in that way. But yeah, we just don't get it. So, are we going to have to wait till the next time we go to Innistrad, or are we going to find out about it at all?
They were leading up to it, right? It seems
sure
like they were really leading up to it. So if we're not getting it for this,
I mean, we can't.
That means that we're coming back to Innistrad again soon so that they can get to it.
Nope.
But, how many years do they have to string people along?
Nope.
Because when we saw them the first time, we were like, oh, great, where's the cards? And then now we have the cards and a story that's got a cliffhanger. So how many years are they going to string us along with these two?
Yeah. So that's why I say, right, this story did a really good job of ending. I'm very proud of you for ending, story. Thank you. Because I don't have to think about, oh, are they coming back? Do I have to care? Do I have to try to remember this? Am I going to have to come back and read this story again the next time it comes up 5 years down the line? Is the website going to work enough for me to be able to do that?
Or are they even still going to have the stories up on the website? Or by then, are they going to decide to put it in a book that costs $50 that you can't decide to, can't afford to buy or whatever, and decide not to anyway because, the first person who buys it complains that there's all these errors or controversies or what have you.
Anyway, our saltiness aside, my final question was, I said, I think this is one of the best versions of the horror short story, but this was released on November 19th. It was the final side story. Now, if the side stories were doing horror movie tropes, or horror tropes, then maybe it makes sense that you end with your strongest one. But also, wouldn't you want to put this one closest to Halloween, if it was your best one?
I don't think they think that much ahead. I think they're just... the schedule is what the schedule is.
I guess.
And
it's just the order of this one didn't matter compared to any of the other ones.
Right, because it was standalone.
It could have gone first, it could have gone last, it could have gone in the middle. None of the side stories continued from one another. It makes sense that because it talks about a vampire, that it should have been in Crimson Vow, but I wouldn't have argued with you if you had put it in Midnight Hunt. The only issue would have been where it says times like these. So, maybe it has to be after it's become Eternal Night, so that you can say times like these.
You know what I thought for a bit there is that a lot of time may have passed because they referred to Avacyn without seemingly remembering her name. So I thought maybe I don't know. I don't know.
I wasn't sure. I
felt like it was in the future. Just this one.
Well, maybe. I don't buy that as much, but I'm also not going to sit here and be like, you're wrong, moving on. I don't know. But
it's just it's kind of a far-fetched theory, but it.
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm
I'm down for.
It's an educated guess.
Yeah, I'm down for tinfoil hat stuff always. So bring it on.
Okay.
But so that I guess that's my question. What do people think? Should this have been posted closer to Halloween? Or was it appropriate for, like, it's the final side story, it did this the best, so let it be that, and let it stand that way. I leaned closer to, this should have been closer to Halloween, right? Because it's the best horror, or the best version of a horror short story that they had, so why not have that closest to your spooky season of, like, highlighting it around Halloween. That's me personally, and again, that's not me saying, like, they screwed up, they didn't do it, they suck. It was, I feel like it could have been this way, and I would have appreciated it more, because it would have been closer, but I still enjoyed it, right? It doesn't matter that I read it closer to Thanksgiving here in the US than I did to Halloween. But I don't know, that's me personally.
I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes sense, put the best one at the end.
Okay, and again, that's why I say, right, I feel like that's the other option, and maybe that was a conscious choice on their part, or like you said, maybe it was just like, okay, Brian, the author of this, got his to us last, so his goes last, right? And that's perfectly fine as well, not a huge deal. I don't know how the internals of that work, and I don't care to know, because, you know, this story was interesting to me, and I appreciate it for what it was. And so, yeah, nicely done.
Yeah,
so
I didn't like the story because I didn't like all the stuff that grossed me out so much. It's not that it wasn't well written, because I think it really was.
Well, obviously, if it, like I said, I have to assume that the goal was to unsettle you, and it deeply unsettled you. So it definitely accomplished its goals.
Right.
Which is a positive thing.
And if it hadn't been written well, it probably wouldn't have been able to do that. Or at least not to the same extent.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. So that is going to be the end of this particular story, this particular review. But that's the end of the side stories. We'll be back next week with the 5th and final main story, episode 5. And then, like I said, on to Neon Dynasty, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty after that. I don't know if people can tell, I'm very much losing my voice. It's like bothering me. That's why I had the water. I don't know that I've like ever drank water on JaAR before, but I needed some because it was bothering me a lot. So, hey, thank you all so very much for being here. I really hope everybody enjoyed this story. And talking about stories like this and saying, like, would it have been better if it was released then, or would it have been better if it was released then? But still being able to say it was well written, even though it deeply unsettled me. And any other opinions that any of you may have that you want to leave in the comments down below is a great way for all of you to join us as we show off our...
#Porthos Pride.
That's right. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Don't forget all that fun YouTube stuff. Liking, sharing, subscribing, ringing bells, checking out the other channels, description box down below. We appreciate any and all support that you are all willing to give. It goes a long way.
Long way.
Truly. So... for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Mimi.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.